lot has changed in the market since your last review of it for MRA Vision. How do you see the market so far this year?
Now, if you're looking at merchant-specific information, right now the market is growing, it is doing well, but there's a very clear caveat here that all of this is being driven by price increases. Year to date, up until the month of April, we've sit with a situation where the market is up almost 20%, but volume in that time is down by about 3% and pricing is up by more than 15%. There's obviously a couple of things that feed into it. We have the very well documented crisis or the war in Russia rather. We have the inflationary pressures, a looming recession happening as well. And the other important thing, of course, is the forecast given by the CPA. They have given quite a bit of a growth towards the end of last year in terms of 2022. So they thought it was going to go well. But for the past couple of quarters, they have continuously revised the growth down. So that in itself also tells you a clear story as to where the market is right now.
What categories are particularly strong currently and what's driving their growth?
Now, if you typically look at the core categories, and in this instance, heavy building materials and timber and joinery, both of those have done relatively well. But if you look at it from a volume perspective, not so much. We've seen the likes of blocks, bricks, cement, roofing and plasterboard all seeing record prices in the first quarter of the year. And that definitely tells you the sort of the pressure that the market is currently experiencing. Timber and joinery pricing itself is a lot higher than a year ago, but it has already started coming down from the fourth quarter of last year. So it's actually the smaller lighter categories, the likes of kitchens and bathrooms, decorating and services that we've seen doing well in the year so far. Those have actually seen some volume increases, which is probably more indicative of actual growth currently happening in the market.
What are the major long-term threats to construction?
Starting again, we've got the inflationary pressures. That naturally means that we're looking at a recession. That's probably expected. People's purses obviously become tightened. There's less disposable income. Then you throw in things like the geopolitical situation we currently have, some potential supply chain issues, all of those things, and then it probably doesn't make for such a clear picture. Another thing that also comes to mind is a possible housing market crash that could take place towards the end of the year. There's a couple of things being mentioned right now, so we don't know how it's going to play out, but that's also something we would need to be mindful of.
What about the big long-term opportunities?
Well, construction is always going to be an important part of the UK economy, so naturally there's always a focus and an incentive for it to do well. If you think about some of the things that is important right now, there's a housing shortage that needs to be addressed. At the same time, there is this focus on a net zero target, which naturally lends itself to some form of innovation to not only address the housing shortage, but also to make sure that the UK landscape in general adheres to that.
And how do you see the next 6 months and beyond into 2023?
Well, I think things are going to get a lot worse, unfortunately, before it gets better. I think the one thing we do use as a barometer is our own consumer confidence. So that's what GfK is best known for. We've started tracking this in 1974. And the idea behind this is to understand consumer and public sentiment around your own personal finances and the UK economy in general. Now, to put it in context, since 1974, right up until now, the most recent month was the most negative one we've seen on record. It's actually been more negative than the 2008 recession and any other major developments that have taken place over the past 40 years. I think the other thing that we have to cover off as well is the inflationary pressures. We've got the looming recession. Again, we've got the geopolitical crisis going on. So it's a case of trying to navigate that in and coming through on the other side.